Hey, everybody. I am so excited for you to watch this episode on defense mechanisms of fantasy. We can get so locked into anticipating the future, which is good, but it can actually become a defense mechanism. We thought we would air this episode during the holiday season because it's very timely. Without realizing it, we can create a lot of expectations that our present reality does not fulfill, especially around the holidays. And we can defend against the present by fantasizing a reality that we wish we had, family members we wish we had, partners that we wish we did or did not have. And there's so many moments that we're actually missing the fumbly, wonderful innocence of right now because we're Instagramming the moment. We're trying to live according to some kind of fantasy rather than just letting the awkward right now be enough. So I hope the awkward, wonderful right now of real life brings you great joy and that you learn from this episode on how to recognize when we're using our defense mechanism of fantasy to not steward the present, but continue to invest in something that's actually an illusion. Thank you for being a part of this community, and I'm excited for you to enjoy this episode. What is your go-to when feeling disappointed? When life sucks and there is no pretty bow that you can wrap around it, where do you go? Do you go to the refrigerator? Do you go to your phone? Do you go to shopping? Do you go to gossip? Do you go to wine or pain pills? Do you go to fantasy? One of the less likely talked about, but more frequently utilized than we realize, is the defense mechanism or coping strategy of fantasy. So recognize the moment the next time that you get disappointed, frustrated, irritated at your life currently, and watch where your thoughts go. Do you start to fantasize, if I just had these kids out of my house, if I just had my own business, if I just could retire, if I could just be married, if I could just be divorced, if I could just own my own home or not be in this situation, then I will be happy. The irony is, as much as those things may be legitimate good dreams and desires of your heart, it's not actually going to satisfy your heart because you're training yourself not to steward the present, but to escape into the future. Now, what happens is you're idealizing and romanticizing a future reality you have not lived, you have not stewarded, and you're not learning how to steward and be grateful and process through the heart of today in order to find the gems and the jewels and treasures of the present. Which means if I don't learn to do that now in my current season, then when I get to that future season and you are married, you do own the home, you are in your business, you have written the book, you are the XYZ executive, in that time, you still have the habit of fantasy, escape, romanticizing a future life, something far away, so I don't have to be present with the future. I would caution you, be aware of where you allow your mindset to go because it's creating discontentment in the present, fantasizing an unreality of the future. Because in the future, it will have problems. As wonderful and marvelous as it is, there will still be a grass that is greener somewhere else that you can always be tempted to compare, to fantasize, to wish. And if we don't develop the habit, the inner discipline of saying, yes, that may be a desire. It may even be a good desire that I have for the future, but I don't want to internally turn to that as a false comforter in a way to escape the reality of hurt and disappointment, rejection, failed expectations of the present. What instead we want to do is learn how to steward the present moment. Process through when your heart is hurting, when you feel disappointed or things don't measure up to what you had expected or anticipated or fantasized from a past experience or season and thought this season would be like. Many people have the high of vacation and then they crash after a vacation. They get an award, they get a celebration, they finally get that raise and that promotion. And then within months, they're discontent and sometimes even more depressed following that achievement, that fantasy goal finally arriving because it's never actually going to satisfy. Those are temporal things that are good, but they are never our source. And if we're not careful, we're looking to those things as our source, and they will always fail to satisfy the deeper longing of our heart. What you want is to enjoy that thing, protect it by not allowing it to be your source. The way you do that is take those thoughts captive and say, hey, my feelings are hurt. I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm disappointed, sad part of me. What am I feeling? Rejected, anxious part of me. What are you feeling? Process that and then redirect your heart back to gratitude and being grateful that this is the very thing you had longed for, you had been striving for. You finally graduated, you finally have that degree, that job, that relationship you thought was going to change everything. And now you're looking at that person or that job and that pile of paper, and it doesn't have the luster like you originally thought. When that happens, you have a trajectory, you have a moment of decision. And you can visualize that you have one screen on one side that's just barking at you, the discontentment that this is not what you deserve. You deserve better. This isn't what you expected. You should have something else. And we secretly, in our heart, start to turn toward a fantasy of wishing we were with someone else, having a different job, having a different degree, a different life. People create emotional affairs in this space. There's a lot of temptation to create the fantasy that something out there will finally make me feel happy. Or the other screen is to look forward and say, I choose gratitude. I choose to cultivate and steward the present moment, relationship, position that I'm in now. That's really hard because many times it goes against every emotional impulse and striving inside of us that wants perfection. We want the bow, we want it to be easy, we want the Instagram filter version of life. But that's not real. And the more time you spend in fantasy is the equal amount of time you are neglecting your current life, your current relationship, your current position and stewardship of a leadership role. What you can do is imagine there is that screen that's luring you, seducing you into discontentment and fantasy of something else that will make me happy. It will not make you happy. I've worked with lots of people over the years, long enough in the trajectory of their life that they get that moment. And I've gotten that moment and it doesn't actually satisfy. It doesn't actually have all the unicorns and bows that I thought it was going to have. I'm a homeowner. And you know what it means? It means responsibility. If somebody has to mow that lawn and pay that big tax bill, thank you, Texas. And you have to do like things break, like you have to steward that. I'm a CEO. How many CEOs are out there that you're like, okay, I don't have a boss. I'm my own boss, which means you get to be the decision maker and the buck stops with you. Yeah, not always glamorous, right? Those moments are opportunities to go back to that first screen and say, I choose gratitude. I choose to be present and enjoy this moment. And then you start writing down, what is the vision that I would love for this moment, this season, this relationship? And what are the action steps I can take to steward this into what my heart desires it to be? I'm not saying that it's not sometimes really frustrating and difficult and disappointing in the current season. But I'm saying if you escape in your heart of hearts into fantasy of wishing you had a different life, of fantasizing what the future will be like, if you just reach that goal, if you get that award, that ceremony, that relationship, that moment is a temptation to neglect the present, and you actually get even further from that reality. It is a discipline. Think of it just like a muscle of repetition that you build that bicep through repetition of drawing your heart away from the fantasy and the idealization of something. Take things off that pedestal of perfectionism so it doesn't fall and fail those unrealistic expectations. Instead, choose to be so humble and grateful and appreciative for every tiny, small blessing that you have. I can look at my own life and say, well, I don't have this. That's expensive. That's overrated. That's breaking down. That's dirty. That's no longer shiny and wonderful. Or I can say, oh my gosh, I am overwhelmed that many of these things that have lost their luster are the very things I had longed for so many years. And now I get to steward them. We lose track of that when we continue in a habit of always looking to the future to make us happy. Learn to be present. Learn to be in this moment. Count your blessings. Turn back to the screen of gratitude and present cultivation of the now. Turn to your loved one and text them and say, I'm so grateful you're in my life. I am so appreciative that I get to wake up next to you every day. Tell a friend that you haven't had connection with in a while, I can't wait to grab coffee with you. Be intentional to steward now. Start investing in those 5 love languages: quality time, words of affirmation, non sexual touch, acts of service, and gifts that are thoughtful and intentional. Be intentional here. Steward now. Build what you want for your future rather than the seductive allure of allowing yourself in discontentment to fantasize a different reality, striving towards something that is an empty cistern. That's just an empty well. It will never satisfy. What you have is right now. And you get to steward through neglect of fantasy, or you steward through imparting and blessing and building up that which is now. Be the person who is grateful, who turns your heart back and says, no, I'm going to take that thought captive. I'm not going to spend the rest of the day comparing on social media or letting my thoughts ruminate about that other person's husband or wife, or I'm not going to let myself fantasize that once I get X, then I'll be happy. We all do it. I do it. It's so easy and seductive. I keep using that word, not like there's a person seducing you necessarily, but it's a seductive thought that's actually, it's very dangerous in its subtlety because it's pulling you away from being on guard, intentional, grateful, and cultivating of the present because you're constantly over here, not standing guard, not being intentional now, but always ungrateful and comparing the present with the fantasy that we create in our imagination. Rather, let today be sublime. Choose that. It is a discipline. It does not come easy for me or anyone else. But the more you discipline yourself to say, okay, I love adventure. I'm going to get a bicycle. I'm going to ride my bike in my neighborhood. I love travel. Okay, I am going to travel in the 30-minute radius of my house of the gas and fuel mileage that I can't afford, or whatever your situation may be. I love travel and adventure. Also, I'm saying it again, but I love it. So I'm going to watch that and write down the dreams, but also start to put things around my house that make me think of tribes and colors and beauty and vibrance and nationality and ethnicity. I'm going to be intentional to cultivate my current relationships instead of always waiting for the future. Let your life begin now through stewarding the present. I love you. And I love, more importantly, that you become so grateful and embedded in cultivating the present really, really well so that your future you looks back, high-fiving you, going, thank you for the intentionality of your investment. So now I get to live in something that's sublime rather than constantly pushing our hope into the future, like kicking a can into the future. You're worth more than that. And I'm excited to hear from you. What are the things you're going to do right now to start investing in the future, investing in your current relationships by being a good steward now so your future you gets to enjoy that harvest?